Hey, how's it going? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Gabby. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different because today I'm going to be kicking off the reading vlog for Fourth Wing. The reason why I decided to read this book this month is because in my TBR video for this month, I pulled a prompt out of my Patreon jar that said to read a really popular viral book talk book. And I'm not even on book talk, not really, but I don't have to be on book talk to know that this book has been going viral all year long. This book is probably one of the most popular books I've seen on the internet in a long time. Like, this book is just absolutely everywhere. Like, people just really seem to be losing their minds over this book. And so I'm not gonna lie, I kind of had a little bit of FOMO. I was just kind of curious about it because, you know, if you're new to my channel, you might not know this, but I am not a fantasy reader. Fantasy is just not a genre that I personally really enjoy. I mean, I've tried time and time again to get into fantasy books. It's not like I've never tried reading them. It's just never been something I've really enjoyed. And so that's why I was hesitant to read this for so long, you know, because as someone who doesn't really enjoy fantasy, like, the idea of reading about dragons makes me want to fall asleep. But I have had so many friends let me know that they do think I would like this one for a number of different reasons, mainly because I guess there's a good romance element in this story that might perhaps intrigue me because I am a big romance reader. My amazing lovely friend Katie that I have in real life was so kind enough to gift me this book, and so I decided why not read it. And you know, the funniest part about this is that I had no idea that I was gonna start reading this book on the day today when the sequel comes out, because I was looking on my Instagram feed and everybody's currently now losing their minds over Iron Flame, which I think is the second book in this series, and I'm filming this intro with you today on November 7th and gonna start reading this book today on the day that Iron Flame came out. So on the off chance that I absolutely love this book and I need to continue in the series, I did decide to put the audiobook on hold for the sequel, like, just in case, because you never know. I think that's another part of the reason why I don't read fantasy very often, is because I find book series to be so intimidating. Like, my memory is not that great when it comes to books, and so the idea of having to, like, remember all the details about a book that I read, like, almost a year ago, like, that does not sound appealing to me. So I think that's why a lot of times I don't often read fantasy series as well, because I find them so intimidating when it comes to remembering things and reading a book in a series, and then also getting introduced to, like, a new world where you have to learn, like, not only a cast of characters, but, like, you have to learn the history of an entire world, potentially, and you have to, like, learn all of the way that this world works. It's just so intimidating to me. Like, I don't know. So we'll see how this goes. I've decided that this vlog is going to be mostly spoiler free, but if I do feel the need to, like, spoil things with you, I might put a spoiler tag, like, over the screen while I'm talking about spoilers, so that if you haven't read the book, you can still watch this vlog and just skip ahead whenever there's spoilers that I want to talk about. And then I also might do a little bit of a spoiler discussion at the end of this video, so you can stick around for those spoilers if you want to see those. But yeah, I'm so excited to read Fourth Wing. I'm excited and nervous because since it's so out of my comfort zone and not my normal genre, I don't know how I'll feel about this. I obviously want to love this book because everyone on the internet just really seems to be loving it so much. So we'll just have to see how I feel about it. I'm gonna give my honest opinions. So yeah, anyways, I'm gonna go get some breakfast started. I'm gonna eat some food, and then I do have some Patreon reading sprints this morning, which is where I'll be starting the first little bit of this book. So let's go ahead and get started. Woo!
Words left on the shelf, full of dust, you'll know it's me and from nobody else. Grab your seat at the fantasy parade. What I see is all inside my head. I come to you and hopefully I can contain myself, pulsing blood that flows through me and wants nobody else.
Okay, so I just read the first 3 chapters and I thought I would give you some first impressions because I'm about 45 pages in. I feel like I've barely made a dent, but I also feel like I'm starting to get an understanding of what's going on. You know, I really jumped into this book without knowing anything about it. Like, I don't know anything. I just know it was about dragons. Like, I don't know. And from what I'm understanding, this book is kind of taking place at this dragon school where you can go to this school for about 3 years and become a dragon rider. And, like, riders are, like, the elite people in their society. I guess like they're the most baddiest of all of the baddies. The only thing I can think to compare this to is Divergent, which I actually really liked Divergent when I read it like back in the day. So like that's giving me hope that maybe this could be something that I, could like. But it's kind of similar to Divergent, I guess, in the way that there are these different quadrants. Riders are one of the quadrants that you can go into, but it's like the most dangerous because most of the people that try to become a dragon rider, like they end up dying. She did say only a quarter of them live to see their graduation, so it is like a very dangerous thing to try to get into. I also was taking notes on like, because like for the fantasy elements, I want to try to understand as much as I can because I don't read fantasy often, so I'm like taking notes so that I get it. But there's different ranks for the cadets at their school. So like there's this thing called threshing, which is where like you bond with the dragon, I guess. Like I don't really know what that means, but they're saying that the dragon will like choose you, and like you have to be strong enough for that dragon to like want to choose you. But then there's also things like wing leaders, there's section leaders, there's squad leaders in their school. And then of course, her sister, because our protagonist is about 20 years old, and I keep forgetting that she's like a whole grown-ass adult because for some reason she's kind of reading more like she's 16, but I guess she's not. She's about 20 years old, and her sister tells her that there's this boy named Zayden that she needs to avoid him at all costs because like if he finds out who you are, he's gonna kill you, because they have like a shared family history. Like things have happened between their families, and like their families just kind of hate each other. So she tells her to avoid this guy Zayden. But of course, this guy Zayden, from what I understand, he's like the leader of the fourth wing. And so of course, naturally, the way our story progresses is that Violet, our main character, gets put into the fourth wing, I think. So they're gonna have some like close proximity. They're gonna be like around each other. And the way that it introduced this Zayden character was a little bit funny because it reminds me of like every young adult, romance book where they're like, his eyes have flecks of gold in them. And it says, it looks like an artist worked a lifetime sculpting him and at least a year of that was spent on his mouth. He's the most exquisite man that I've ever seen. It's just very, dramatic in the way that it describes him as like being very attractive. Like, I get it, girl, I get it. But then there's also been this other dude character that was introduced, and his name is Dane, and she like grew up with him like as like a childhood friend. And so I'm kind of thinking like, is he also gonna be a potential love interest? Like, I don't really know if that's where this is gonna go, but I can totally see this author like setting up this whole love triangle with these two guys. Like, I don't really know if that's how it's gonna be, because maybe the guy Zayden, maybe he's gonna be the main love interest. Like, so far it's going okay. Like, I'm intrigued. I'm surprised at how easy it is for me to get into this as like a non-fantasy reader, because I was thinking it was gonna be like overwhelming and really intimidating and like confusing to read, but so far I'm not finding it to be that way. And granted, I am only 40 pages in, like I don't really know where this story is gonna end up going, but so far it's going all right. I'm actually kind of here for the romance. Like, I think the romance so far is like the most interesting thing about the story to me. But yeah, anyways, I'm doing some reading sprints right now on my Patreon, and I just plan to continue to listen to this quite a bit more this afternoon. I might go ahead and pour myself a coffee too at some point, but I will update you with more thoughts once I get a little bit further in.
And all of my charades, I am not any less afraid. Am I hanging on too tight? Baby, you're my light. Am I hanging on too tight? Baby, you're my light. I never wanna fall away or lose my sight. Am I hanging on too tight? For me, it's just the thought of you that sets it right. Baby, you're my light.
All right, I'm now 120 pages in, so I thought it would be a good time to update you again. I feel like the last, I don't know, like 80 pages that I've read or so have been a little bit more on the slow side. I think at this point there's not like a whole lot really happening in the story necessarily. It just feels like we're preparing for things. Like, we're just following this character Violet as she's, going to school and like learning about the history of things and learning about the war. She's also doing a lot of like practicing on the mat. Like, she has to like challenge people, and they have to like physically like try to fight each other, There's a lot of that going on, which those scenes also remind me a lot of Divergent. I think something about the writing that's annoying me a little bit is that this character, I can't tell you how many times she's been like oh, this guy, what was his name again? I think it started with a B, like what was his name? And then she's done that at least like 5 times for like 5 different characters where she'll be like, oh, that one girl, what was her name again? I can't remember her name. And then like after the character, like somebody else will say their name and she'll be like, oh yeah, that was their name. It's like, okay, you don't need to do that like every single time we get introduced to a new character. So like that writing was a little bit annoying to me. Something that I think is kind of cool about this book that I didn't realize is that these people that are writers with their dragons, they actually get like powers from the dragons after they've been like bonded with them. And so it's really interesting because they're saying like the stronger that your bond is with your dragon, the stronger your powers will be. And like each person gets like different powers from what I understand. Like that's what makes them so like unique and like extraordinary, is the fact that they get like unique sets of powers. Some people get powers that like help them out in battles, that's like fire or like water or like ice or stuff like that. But then some people get really cool powers where like they can see the future, or they can like read people's minds, or like, you know, it's like really interesting different types of shit. So far I think the romance elements of this book have just been a little cringy. Like I don't know, I'm not obsessed with the romance so far. It's kind of reading like any typical romance where like she's a tiny petite little thing and he's just like this massive Greek god that's just so strong and so powerful, and he's sculpted from the gods because he's so beautiful but he's dangerous. You know, like it's reading very like stereotypical romance so far, but like I don't dislike it either. Like I'm just kind of like, all right. I think the romance is actually one of the elements of the story that I'm the most intrigued by, just because it's familiar to me, because I'm a big romance reader. I did want to mention some things that I think could be potential like little spoilers, because I'm only 120 pages in and not too much has happened yet. But if you don't want to know like some specific details, then maybe these would be considered spoilers, so maybe you can skip ahead. But I think it's so funny to me that like Violet, in one of her very first battles, she gets her arm broken, and then her friend, you know, Dane, like her childhood friend, like absolutely freaks the fuck out, and he goes and like takes her to the healers, and the healers are like healing her arm, and this man Dane is like so persistent with the fact that he doesn't want her to be here, and he wants her to like go and be a scribe or whatever. Like he doesn't want her to become a writer because he thinks that her life is in danger because, you know, Xaden like hates her so much or whatever. And he's just so passionate about it, almost to the point where it's like annoying. I'm like, dude, I get it, like you're trying to protect her, but like back the fuck off, you know? Like he's literally like going behind her back and like trying to figure out if he could get her in with like the scribe people. Like he's just kind of annoying about it. So, and I can't tell if it's still gonna try to like lean into a romance with Dane's character as well, which I don't think I would support that anymore, because Dane is annoying me. And then Xaden, it's not like he's any better, but you know, I find it so entertaining that Violet, she keeps like, you know, in order to win her matches, she keeps like drugging her opponents, which I just thought was so funny. Like she talked about how she got these like berries and mushrooms that she like slips into her opponents like drinks or lunch that day, so then they're kind of like sluggish during the challenge. And I'm like, is this even allowed? I'm like, what is going on? She's literally drugging her opponents. And then they said this one girl that she was supposed to fight or like challenge that day, like the girl like could barely even walk and stand, and she's like, fuck, like I accidentally gave her too much. And so then of course Xaden steps in and he's like, oh, I'll take her place. And then they have their own little battle in front of everyone, and it's like she obviously gets her ass kicked because he's not drugged. But I do kind of like their little bit of banter. Like I don't know, he calls her Violence. Like I don't know if I like it or not, but I think it's kind of cute. Like I don't know. Also, something I didn't realize about the dragon thing was gonna be that the dragons actually talk. Like, did I actually know that the dragons would talk in this book? I don't know if I knew that, but I think it's so funny that they said the dragons only talk to their writers. So like the dragons don't just talk to anybody. Like no, I haven't really gotten to any scenes yet where dragons are actually talking, but like I'm curious to see what that will be like. I still have about 20 minutes left on my current reading sprint, and then I think I'm gonna do at least one more reading sprint before this afternoon. I think this afternoon I'm gonna try to go to the grocery store because I want to get some stuff for dinner tonight. We just want to make fancy turkey bacon avocado sandwiches tonight, and then I think tomorrow night we're gonna try to make potato soup again, like homemade potato soup. So we just need to get a few things to make both of those things. So I'm gonna be going to the store after I get off of reading sprints, and I'll update you again once I get to the store.
One thing I've been wanting, but no over. When she laid down on the couch, the best. Remind myself the
Okay, hi, I just pulled up at the grocery store, so I thought I would give you a quick update because I've still been reading Fourth Wing. I got all the way up to page 187, so I still feel like I'm pretty early into the book, but now I'm having a lot more thoughts because at this point in time, as I said on my Patreon, the dragons are dragoning. And you know, I never thought that I gave a fuck about dragons, to be honest. Like, I never thought that I would care, but I'm actually really into this right now. I don't know why. I think the dragons are like 10 times more interesting than any of the characters in this book, and I'm not not mad about it, you know? Like, I think the dragons are really interesting. The dragons in this book have me, you know, questioning everything I ever thought about myself when it comes to fantasy. Because I was talking about this with my sister, and I guess, like, the things in fantasy that I usually don't like, I don't know if dragons have ever fallen onto that list, you know? Because usually the things that I don't like in fantasy include, like, you know, medieval, like, royalty, like, fantasy politics just kind of bores me. I also don't love in fantasy when we're following, like, wizards and when there's, like, curses and spells and magic and casting spells. Like, I don't care about that kind of stuff. And I don't like world building in fantasy and, like, trying to learn about an entire new world. But, like, there has been some fantasy that I've enjoyed, and I do enjoy a lot of, like, sci-fi fantasy. And while reading this, I was like, it's making me want to rewatch How to Train Your Dragon, which is, like, one of my favorite animated movies. Like, I loved all of those movies. And I was, like, thinking, I was like, I did like the dragons in How to Train Your Dragon. Like, the dragons were so cute. Like, the dragons were my favorite part of it. And so now that we're, you know, getting to the dragons in this book, I'm, like, starting to enjoy it a lot more, which is crazy because I thought that the fantasy elements of this book would be the things that I didn't like. But the fantasy elements have actually been really interesting and probably like the most interesting thing for me because the characters in this are just okay to me. They're honestly reading a bit like stereotypes, like, you know, they're fine. I did want to mention a few spoilery things, so I will put a spoiler warning on the screen. So you've been warned. If you don't want to be spoiled, skip ahead. But yeah, I just got to the scene where the dragon, I think his name is Tarn. Is Tarn how you say his name? I don't know. Tarn. He's like the biggest dragon that she's ever seen in her fucking life. And so of course it chooses Violet, right? Because Violet is like the tiniest little human and she's so small that she can't even like climb up onto the back of this dragon. Like that whole scene was just so entertaining, and I love the way that the dragon can like speak to her without actually like talking. It's kind of confusing because the dragon, it's like telepathic or something. It can just like communicate to her with its brain, and now it's like their brains are like synced up or something, you know, because the dragon can read all of her thoughts, which I think is just really fun. Her and the dragon have such great like banter, and like they're so funny with each other. Like I just really fucking love this dragon. But then what was interesting is that, you know, Violet, she was protecting this little gold dragon because these fucking assholes were trying to kill this little baby golden dragon because they said it was too small and it's like useless because nobody can fly it. And I'm like, hell no, like they were trying to kill this little baby innocent dragon. And so Violet was trying to protect this dragon. And now what's funny is that both of these dragons have like bonded with her, and now both of the dragons are like connected to her. And I don't know if this has ever happened in like their dragon school, that two dragons want the same writer. And so it's interesting though, because I'm like, oh my god, like what are they gonna do? Like, is she gonna have to choose? I also love the fact that, of course, our boy, what's his name, Dane, of course he's like wanting her to choose the smaller dragon because he thinks it's too dangerous for her to have the big dragon, which is just like, oh my god, he's so annoying. Like, why is he so controlling? But then I also think it's funny how Dane is trying to accuse the guy Xaden of like interfering and like manipulating the threshing of, you know, when the dragon chose her, because he's saying that this huge dragon, you know, like the one that just bonded with her, is mates with the dragon that Xaden, like his dragon is a female dragon and hers is a male dragon, and they're like mates, and so they're gonna have to be around each other more often, I think is what they're saying, because the dragons are mates. And so of course you know, his reaction is like, oh my god, of course he's manipulating the threshing so that he can be near you and he can have more control over you or whatever the fuck. I don't know. That guy Dane is getting on my last freaking nerve. Like, even if he does mean well for her, he's too controlling and he's just interfering too much with her shit. And so that's kind of where I'm at. I loved the scene of like Violet defending the little golden dragon and then like the big black dragon coming in and saving her. Like, it was such a fun scene to read. It was so entertaining. And now that the dragons are like basically characters and they're kind of like talking with her, I'm finding it to be so much more fun. Like, I love these dragons so much. They have such cute personalities and I just like adore them both. And so now that the dragons are dragoning, I'm having a great time. Like, I didn't think I would like the dragons, but I love them. I love the dragons. They're so fun. I'm going to go ahead and get some groceries for us tonight. I also have Winterween stickers in the back seat that Rachel asked if I could drop them off because she has so many. She has like a whole box full of Winterween stickers, and so I'm gonna drop those off on the way home. I'll try to film some stuff in the grocery store, but I also feel like it's gonna be very crowded in there. Like, I can just tell it's gonna be really crowded, and I don't like filming in very crowded public spaces, but I'll do my best for you. And we're gonna be making dinner, probably watching some Selling Sunset tonight, so I'll try to update you when I can about the book when I get back to it. It's about 11 o'clock at night, but I wanted to update because I've still been reading Fourth Wing. I just hit chapter 22, which puts me at about 263 pages in. After going to the store, we made a really good dinner. Oh my gosh, the dinner was so freaking good. We made turkey sandwiches, but we wanted to make like fancy turkey sandwiches, so we made it on like sourdough bread. I got honey turkey. We got smoked Gouda cheese. We put bacon on it, avocado, tomato. Like it was just chef's kiss, top tier. Like one of the best sandwiches I think that I've ever made. And then after that, we watched Selling Sunset for like literally hours. You know, like the new season just went up, so like there's a whole new season. We watched probably like 6 episodes tonight because that show is just like my ultimate guilty pleasure. Like I know that show is kind of like trash. It's kind of like trashy reality TV, like drama, but I also just like love the real estate aspect of Selling Sunset. But anyways, we were watching that for a couple of hours, and then afterwards I just laid in bed and read almost 100 pages more of this. Really enjoying this for the most part. Like there was definitely a little bit of slower moments for me where I didn't find myself caring as much in like the last chunk that I just read, but there was also a few scenes where I was like, oh shit, like things are happening, things are getting interesting. I did want to mention a few different spoiler things for what I just read, so I'm so sorry for being annoying. If the spoilers are annoying, I'm so sorry, but there's a few things that I want to talk about, so if you don't want to be spoiled, you can just skip ahead. But one of the scenes that I was like, oh shit, is because the guy Dane, like her childhood best friend dude, he finally kissed her, and I was like, oh, Violet realized like she was not into it, and so like that happened finally, because I was so curious if he was actually gonna be like a potential love interest or not. And then like he made his move, but then like shortly after that he like tells her that he's like, we can't be together right now, like that was a mistake. And she's like, oh thank God, like he feels the same way I do. And then he was like, yeah, because I'm a squad leader, like I rank higher than you, and like I'm not willing to like risk my job just to be with you. And she's like, oh okay. I don't really vibe with this man. I'm glad that she's not into it. I also wrote a note that I love how Taryn, her dragon, I love how he calls her Silver One. Like I just think their little bond is so cute, and the way that he's teasing her about Xaden is just so cute. One of the scenes that I thought was really interesting that I just read, that was like one of my standout moments of this last little part, was when, Violet gets attacked in her sleep by like 6 other people because they're all jealous that she has the 2 dragons, and she's basically become public enemy number 1 because she has the 2 dragons, so like everybody's targeting her, everybody's trying to kill her, and so these 6 people come after her when she's asleep. But it was really cool because then her dragon, Andarna, the little gold dragon, she like shows up and she's somehow able to like stop time. Like everyone freezes in place and she's able to like get away from them because she freezes time, which is so crazy and so cool. And then I really loved that scene because then Xaden comes in and then just like fucking kills all 6 of them because they like broke the rules. And I also thought it was so funny because right after that she was kind of like, Violet was like, what the fuck just happened? Like, did you stop time? Like, what the fuck is going on? And she said that because she's a feather-tailed dragon, it says these kinds of dragons shouldn't bond because they can accidentally gift their powers to the human. And she's like, well, isn't that like what the signet thing is, or like what they usually do? But she's like, no, the signets is usually combining the power with their ability to channel it, but she actually gave her gift like directly to Violet. So now I'm like, now Violet has the ability to like stop time if she wants to, which is like kind of really fucking cool. Like I don't know, I really liked that. And then it was so funny too because they found out that Andarna, like the dragon, is a hatchling because she's only 2 years old. And I thought that was so cute because she is giving such like little baby dragon energy, and like I thought it was obvious, I guess, that she was like a baby dragon, but I guess that wasn't supposed to be obvious, so it got revealed that she's like a little baby. It's also a really intense scene where they called out that girl Amber because she was the one who was like involved with like trying to kill Violet on that night, and Xaden was the one who like called her out publicly, and then they like killed her in front of everyone. And then, so yeah, that's kind of all that has happened since the last time that I updated you, and I'm still very much enjoying it. I'm thinking that tomorrow morning I'm probably gonna try to go to the gym first thing in the morning. I think I'm gonna try to finish up this book tomorrow because I'm almost at exactly about 50% of the way through now, so I feel like tomorrow it's really just gonna fly through because now that I'm already like enjoying it, I find that I tend to fly through books a lot quicker once I'm already invested and starting to love it. So hopefully tomorrow's half of this book goes just as well as today's. Like today was very unexpected. I wasn't thinking that I was gonna be as into this book as I am, so like that's pretty cool.
You in your wild. I took you in my wings.
from the gym and doing all of the things this morning, and I've still been listening to Fourth Wing on audio. I'm now at page 346, which puts me all the way up to chapter 28. And this morning I had a really productive morning, you know. I got up early, I went to the gym. I was actually on the treadmill for about an hour, and most of the time while I was on the treadmill, I was still listening to this on audio. And then I came home, I took a quick shower, I ate some food. While I was making breakfast, I was still listening to this, and yes, I made the same breakfast as yesterday, okay? You cannot judge me. I'm a person of routine, okay? I know what I like, I find out what I like, and then I prep in advance, you know, because I had to hard boil those eggs yesterday. I had to use them today. But anyways, I've still been reading this book. There are some things that I'm finding to be so interesting and some things that I'm finding to be so cheesy. I think most of the cheesiness that I'm feeling is actually coming from the romance elements of this book. Just because, I don't know, for me, I'm feeling like the romance is giving so much young adult energy. I just feel like I read a lot of young adult romances that are kind of similar to this style of the way that the romance is written, and so I think it's just a little bit cringy at times with the romance. I still can't decide if I'm on board with the romance or not, because some scenes I'll be like, oh my god, like they're cute and they have like good banter, and then some scenes I'm like, oh my god, they're trying so hard and it's actually really cringy, and I don't know if I'm really into this. I feel like this guy Xaden is just like the typical bad boy kind of like love interest, where like he just has this image of like he's so dangerous and he's so broody and like violent and nobody wants to talk to him, but on the inside he's actually a total softie who's like looking out for her. You know, he's just such a stereotype, I guess, when it comes to love interest. And then Violet sometimes, like, I don't know, sometimes she reads so young. Like, sometimes she reads a lot younger than she is. And maybe it also has to do with, like, the audiobook, because, like, I am listening to this on audio as well. And, like, the way that the audiobook narrator will narrate Violet sometimes, especially when she, like, has her little tantrums, she sounds so much younger than, like, I think she's intended to sound. But anyways, to jump into a few spoilers of some things that have happened, because I do have to talk to you about some of the spoilery things, because things have been happening. So one of the scenes that I just read is like the scene where she finally got her powers, you know, like she finally gets all of the powers, and I found it so funny because like she just gets her powers and then all of a sudden she's like so fucking horny, like she just wants to fuck everyone, and I'm like, oh, okay. Because there's like a scene where she like sees Liam and she's like, oh my god, like what is this sudden urge that I have, like I want to sit on his lap, and then she's like, no, but he's not who you really want, like you want Xaden, and she has to like get out of there because she's just like so in the mood to fuck everyone, and she has to get out of there. Like it was just so funny. I was like, girl, what? And then of course, like while she's feeling this way, she bumps into Xaden, and then they have their first kiss because he like teaches her how to like control her powers, which I thought would be much cooler, but it was actually like he was just like, just imagine a door and then lock the door and then you can still see through the door, but now the powers are like behind the door. I don't know, it was very like simple, I guess. Like I thought it was gonna be more complex than that, but it was very simplistic. And then he was like, oh my god, I shouldn't have touched you, and like this is gonna be a mistake, we're both gonna regret it, and he's like, fuck it, and then he kisses her, and I was like, oh my gosh, like the build up to that scene was just so, it was a little cringy for me, I'm not gonna lie. But then he kisses her, and then like shortly after that they stop kissing, and he's like, we can't go through with this because this is our dragon's desires, like it's not our desires, you know, like it's our dragons are like channeling their desires through us. And I'm like, all right, sure, like we'll go with that, okay. And then there was the scene where her friend Rhiannon, like she ended up getting her powers, and she has like summoning powers, which I thought was pretty cool. Like she can't do anything like through walls or through anything like that yet, but I don't know, her powers are pretty interesting to me. There was also a scene where she like finally fought this asshole Jack, like who's been trying to kill her basically like since the beginning, and in the scene he like nearly kills her, like he comes so close to killing her, and then she whips out this like vial of oranges because she found out that he's allergic to oranges, so she like uses that against him and is able to like win the battle still, which I thought was just kind of funny. And then now I just reached a scene where Xaden can like talk to her telepathically now because their dragons are like mates, and because the dragons can talk to them telepathically, somehow Xaden is now able to talk to Violet like telepathically, and so he can just like talk to her in his head and not say any words out loud, and she's getting all flustered because he keeps like saying things to her telepathically in front of like their little group of friends, and then she keeps like feeling like she's going insane because she's like, how are you doing that? And so that's kind of like interesting. I don't know, I do like the idea of like how these dragons are able to talk to their riders, and then I like how now it seems like Xaden's able to do that too. So I don't know, it's interesting. I feel like I just got to a point where things are gonna start to get a lot more action-packed. At least the way that that last chapter just ended, it makes me feel like we're going in a direction where things can really be picking up, like story-wise. And so I don't know, I think my plan for today is just to try and sit here and finish this book because I only have about 150 pages left. And so yeah, hopefully I can finish this up today and come back at you with some thoughts once I'm done.
Do you ever think about the time when we were young? Everything we dreamt of being, we had so much fun. I don't wanna lose your love. I've been wishing on the stars above. If I go back in time far enough, I know that I would find you. Those lazy days where we would sit out on the pier. The sky was wide open and everything was crystal clear. Anything that you would tell me, I just couldn't wait to hear. And we'd soak up the sun, smiling ear to ear.
Okay, hi, I am back with an update because I finished reading Fourth Wing. It's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon and the sun's already going down. It's just crazy how quickly it's getting dark now. But anyways, so I finished the book and I have very mixed feelings about this book. I feel like I might be more one of those people who's just kind of like in the middle with this one. Like, I don't think I loved it. I don't think I hated it. I feel like in some ways I can definitely see the hype with this book, but I also think that it might be a little bit overhyped. And maybe that's because fantasy is not my usual genre, so you can probably take my review with a grain of salt. But I think I'm probably gonna end up giving this book 3 stars because there were some things that I really enjoyed about this book, mostly the dragons, and then there were some things that I just really didn't enjoy that much about this book. As for my like non-spoiler thoughts about the rest of the book, I just wasn't a huge fan, I guess, of the second half of this book. Like, the beginning was definitely really interesting to me. I liked the setup of a lot of things, but then once things actually started happening, the romance, for example, I thought the romance was cute in the beginning. I thought they had a lot of banter. I liked how he called her Violence. Like, like little nicknames like that I just think are so cute. But then as the story goes on and the romance starts really like happening, there are some graphic sex scenes in this book and I just don't think they were very well written in my opinion. Like, they were just not that interesting, and this is coming from someone who reads, a lot of romance. Like, I do tend to read a lot of romance books, so I don't necessarily mind reading about sex scenes, but there was just something in particular about their romance. I just don't know if I could get on board with it. I was never like rooting for them. I was never like yes when things were happening between them. Like, I just didn't really care, I guess, after that long about the romance. I also think while the Violence nickname was like cute at first, like I genuinely thought it was so cute, but then after a while, dude, it started to get so annoying. Like, he would just call her Violence like every other sentence, and like I like nicknames or like pet names like that when they're used like once or twice, maybe like once in a while, but no, I'm not even kidding, dude. There was a point where he called her Violence like 3 times on the same page, and it was also like when they were having very serious conversations and like they were almost like fighting with each other, and he would just be like, listen, Violence. I don't know, I just could not take it seriously when he would keep calling her Violence like every 2 minutes. I also think, and this is gonna sound stupid because this is a fantasy book, but later on in the book starts to feel a lot more fantasy, like a lot more fantasy in that like last third of it, and that shit really just felt like it went right over my head, or like I just didn't really care anymore what was going on. I feel like even as the action picked up towards the end, and I thought I was like, it was written in a way where you feel like you're supposed to really care about what's going on because, the narrator on the audiobook, like her voice is getting all intense and like things are happening, but I just didn't find myself caring as much as I thought that I should, like I just didn't care about a lot of these action sequences at the end, and things were happening and there were words being used that I just didn't understand what was going on. I do think though that this book does end on a pretty great cliffhanger. Like, there was something that happened at the end of this book that I personally didn't see coming, and I thought it was a pretty good plot twist, but at the same time, like, is it a good enough plot twist twist that it's gonna convince me to read the second book. Like, I don't know. I don't really know, if I'm being honest at this point, if I'm interested in reading the sequel. I almost just kind of want to see like what some people are saying, like if the early reviews are looking good, but I don't know if I'm interested in reading the sequel. Like, it's a possibility. Like, I'm not gonna say like, oh, I'm not continuing the series, but I also am not like running to the store to go get the second book right now, you know, so I'm just kind of feeling very mid about it. I do think that I agree though when people are saying that this reads like a young adult book. I can definitely see why they're saying that, and I think I would agree just because of the way that Violet's character is written. It's not even so much her love interest. Like, Xaden, he doesn't really read that young to me. I don't know why. It's something about Violet and the way that she's written. She really does come across like a 16-year-old girl most of the time, and I think that's why it can be kind of shocking or like surprising when you get to the graphic sex scenes in here, because you're like, oh shit, like what is this? And then you're like, oh yeah, she's an adult. Like, I keep forgetting that she's supposed to be like 20 years old. And because the sex scenes were so cringy in my opinion, like I swear that I've read some steamier fanfics than this, you know? Because I was really hoping it would be the romance that would really grip me in this book, but to my surprise, it was actually the dragons. Like, the dragons were the most interesting aspect of this book to me. I think part of the reason though why I did enjoy this book as much as I did, and why I do think a lot of people are really loving this book and why it's so popular right now, is because in a way it definitely made me feel nostalgic for like the books that I used to read back in like 2012 or like 2013. You know, like it reminded me of like Divergent or like The Hunger Games or The Maze Runner or like any of these old fantasy books that I used to try to read back when I was like trying to get into reading back in those years. But I think in a lot of ways, like a book like this can make you feel nostalgic for those times, like when those books were really popular. And even though I don't think, like me personally, I don't think this book is as good as those like OGs like Divergent or like The Hunger Games. I don't think this book is as good, but I can see why so many people are loving this and why they're into it. I just don't think it's really my thing. But at the same time, I'm also really glad that I gave this book a shot, because there were some things about this book that surprised me, and now I know that fantasy isn't a genre that I will always dislike, because there were some fantasy elements of this book that I was really intrigued by, like the dragons. I know I keep saying the dragons, like the dragons were so unexpected for me, because the dragons were actually the thing that held me back from reading this for so long, because I was like, if there's dragons in it, I'm just like not gonna give a fuck, like I wouldn't care. And the dragons were actually my favorite part of this story, so that's why I think it's important to read some books out of your comfort zone sometimes, or some books that you don't think that you'll like, because you never know. But anyways, I do want to talk about some spoilers for the rest of this book. So if you are interested in hearing my spoilers, then we'll get into it. But if you don't want to be spoiled for the rest of this book, you can click off the video at this point. Thank you so much for watching. You'll have to let me know if you're planning to read this book after this vlog, if you're interested in it, or let me know all of your thoughts. But yeah, anyways, spoilers, let's get into it. So something that I thought was kind of cool about the ending is when we learn about how Violet gets her powers, like when her powers finally start working, and she has like lightning is her powers, like she can just like control lightning, which I think was really cool. It was almost like a Thor moment, you know? Literally, I was taking notes on like what was happening towards the end, and like some of my notes are just like her and Xaden fuck, and then another note just says they fuck again. There wasn't a lot happening in my opinion in that second half of the book, other than like their romance was just really taking off. I think part of the reason why a lot of the ending of this book really started to bore me is because, you know, as I said, when the book started to feel more fantasy towards the end, there were things being revealed that I didn't entirely understand, because Violet finds out that like everyone in their group besides her is like children of the separatists, or like what are they called? I don't know, but I think it means that everyone in their group was basically like a traitor, and she didn't know that. And then he explains to her that there's this thing called venom that's actually real, like she thought it was like a hoax, I guess, and it's some kind of like dark magic that I don't understand. And then they said too, it's not a dragon, it's a wyvern. Like there were these creatures that were called wyverns that got introduced at the end, and like I have no fucking idea what that means. And then the ending of this book was a lot of like battle scenes between like the dragons and the wyverns, and there was a lot of things happening, and the audiobook narration was just so I don't know, it was kind of annoying. I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of annoying, because the audiobook narrator would just be like, and then I yelled at him to do this, and then like her voice would just get so like shrill and like intense, and I just felt like I should care about what's going on, but I just didn't really feel like I cared about anything that was going on in those last few scenes. I also thought the ending just felt so random, because at the very ending of the book, Violet is like unconscious for some time, time. I don't know if she was unconscious for like 3 days or if she was unconscious for like a really fucking long time. But then the very last chapter of the book is told from Xaden's perspective, which I was like, oh, what? Like, so we get Xaden's perspective only in the last chapter, which I thought was kind of interesting. Like, I don't know, but I also didn't really love reading from his point of view as much as I thought that I would, because earlier in the story, I remember thinking like, oh, it would be cool if we got Xaden's point of view, but then after getting his point of view, I was like, you know what? I'm good. I don't need Xaden's point of view. It does make me wonder though, if in the sequel, if we're gonna start getting Xaden's point of view like more often, and that's just like a preview of what's to come. Because if we do get Xaden's point of view in the next book, like, I don't know, it has me like less intrigued to pick up the next book if that's the case. But anyways, it's just so random because then we get his point of view in the last chapter, and then the very last plot twist of the book, like the last moment, is when she wakes up and she finds out that her fucking brother is still alive. Like the guy Brennan, like right at the beginning of this book, she's talking about how her brother died 5 years ago. His name was Brennan. And at the very end of this book, he just walks into the room and he's like, that definitely wasn't an accident, little sister, he says from the doorway. And she's like, Brennan? And it's like, Brennan just grins and opens his arms. Welcome to the revolution, Violet. Like, that's how the story ends? Like, I'm sorry, what? I mean, I didn't see it coming that the brother would be alive, and I do think that it's a kind of interesting plot twist, you know, like, it's something to keep the readers engaged. I get why she did it. But at the same time, I'm like, that moment just felt so, like, anticlimactic. I literally, like, that happened, and then I was like, wait. I just, like, reread the lines again, and I was like, what? I don't know, I feel like that ending could have been written in a little bit more impactful of a way, you know? It just kind of felt like, okay, I guess it's over now. I also just think too, like, I don't know if this was supposed to be like an actual love triangle, because I could not stand that guy Dane for like most of the book, but I think it was also really funny how like Dane had that reaction after he found out that she's been like fucking Xaden, and like, oh my gosh, the fucking bickering back and forth between Dane and Xaden when they would just be like talking near her, but they would talk as if she wasn't there. They were just so annoying. Like, I honestly couldn't stand those moments when they were just like bickering with each other. It just felt like such a forced love triangle situation, because like, it's not a real love triangle. Like, were we ever really rooting for Dane? No. I think that's why I'm so torn over like the rating and how I feel about this one, because there were so many things about this that I really loved. I think most of the things that I loved were in the first half of the book. I really loved the dragons. I loved their personalities. I think I wanted more of the dragons in the second half. Like, I feel like in the second half of the book, we got way less dragons and we got more of just this like bullshit love triangle, and Xaden and Violet just like having sex and him calling her Violence every like 2 seconds. And then I know there were like a lot of battle scenes with the dragons at the end, but I still don't feel like the dragons were like the center of like what was happening, you know? Like, I was just bored by everything that was happening at the end. So I don't really know, but again, I'm not a fantasy reader, and I don't know if this book has encouraged me to want to try more fantasy in the future. Like, I don't really know. I think if anything, I'm glad that I read this book because it has proved to me that I can like some aspects of fantasy, and that I shouldn't just like shut down the genre completely just because it's out of my comfort zone or because I don't think that I'll understand. And so I think just for that reason, I'm glad that I read this book, and I'm glad to have wrapped up this vlog. So do let me know if you have read Fourth Wing. What are your thoughts on it? Do you enjoy it? Do you despise it? Let me know all of your thoughts down below. And also, if you've read the sequel, Iron Flame, do you think it's worth checking out? I know it just came out very recently, but let me know what your thoughts are on it. If you love this series, what other fantasy series would you recommend to me as a complete beginner, as somebody who really doesn't know anything about fantasy? Let me know any of your recommendations down below. Thank you so much for watching, as always, and I will see you very soon with another video. Bye.